Welcome back once again to the Imaginary Gallery. This is TJ, and this is Jade, my 16-year-old miniature pinscher daughter. She just wanted to say hi. She says, hi, hi. This is Narcissist Trash Talk. Tonight's topic of discussion is going to be entitled Recognizing Covert Abuse. What I'm going to do is start off with just an example of actual covert abuse as far as a little story goes, and then I'm going to tie it into real life example for adults like us. The reason for this particular video is because I was thinking about it and realized much later that I was actually experiencing covert abuse and didn't even know it. I just thought, oh, this person's got a problem with telling the truth. Oh, this person doesn't know how to be honest. But that's actually not the case, and it took a friend of mine to actually point out. When I told her, it's like, listen to what happened. This happened and that happened. Her response was quick. It was, that's abuse. And I had never thought of it that way. And of course, this was many years back. Now, of course, I know better. This little video is just for those of you who may not be completely sure. And just to give you some insight, hopefully the insight will indicate your situation is not abusive. But indicates there is abuse, well, then at least you'll be prepared and ready to deal with what you're dealing with. To illustrate this concept, kind of like isolating the whole thing so you can observe it objectively. There's a child. There's a little girl who's in grade school, and she was excited because she was going to be learning basic mathematics on one particular day. Well, she went to class, and she went through the studies, and she felt really proud because she learned basic mathematics, that she practiced some math problems, and she learned most definitely that 1 plus 1 equals 2. So she is excited, thinking, I'm going to be a real good kid. I know math now, even though it's just basic math. But for this child, it means the world to her. She's proud, happy all day, thinking she learned something new, and well, when she goes home, Daddy's there. And she goes to Daddy and says,
Daddy, guess what? I've learned how to do mathematics.
And then she proceeds to demonstrate to Daddy.
For example, I learned that 1 plus 1 equals 2.
And she's all gushing with happiness. But to her shock and surprise, Daddy's face remains straight. Daddy doesn't give the anticipated reaction she's looking for, which would be something like,
oh, that's right, good job, you're great.
That's not what she gets. Instead, she is greeted with,
You sure about that? You said 1 and 1 equals 2?
and of course, up to this point, she's been very self-confident that that most definitely is true, but she's seeing her father's face not smiling, not being happy, and actually questioning, are you sure? Which immediately cuts into her happiness, joyful feelings, because she worries that maybe she misunderstood, maybe she's not right, maybe she doesn't really know mathematics, because she's looking at her father, and he's not laughing or joking, he's being serious, and he even goes as far as to say,
I think you better go back to class and relearn that lesson because that isn't right. 1 plus 1 does not equal 2.
Well, if you're a child just learning mathematics, this is probably a gigantic big deal to you, but we can look at it and think the father's lying, but the child wouldn't know this. Children don't normally expect their caregivers to be deliberately, painfully dishonest, but the point of it is she's proud because of her knowledge, and he's cutting that pried away from her by this covert abuse, because the fact is 1 plus 1 does equal 2. We all know that. However, it's as if he didn't like to see his little girl thinking that she's gotten the brain on her shoulders now and that she knows it all, even though it's a very basic math problem. He chooses to put some seeds of doubt in her mind by acting as if she's got it wrong. Now I can tie this into a similar example that's real in relation to cursive writing. You see, I have a sister who's 3 years my senior, so I kind of got a preview of what was to come, like from the transition from grade school to middle school and then to junior high and then to regular high school. I got a sneak preview because I was living with it in the same house. So I remember at one point I thought I'd use that to my advantage. I'd learned how to write, but the writing I'd learned was standard handwriting, and in one of the later classes they taught cursive handwriting. One thing I recall was going through my sister's school assignments thinking, wow, this is neat. It'll be 3 more years before I see this. So I became excited and I looked at the letters and how they're written in cursive. And I, of course, looked for my own letter, T, and I saw a T that was designed in a fancy way, different from just a z. It was strangely shaped. Well, so what I started to do in my grade school class, before we had that lesson, I would write my name on the paper using the cursive writing T, taken directly out of the textbook. It was like a regular thing, and I was proud of it, thinking, I'm a step ahead of these teachers or whatever. Well, I was treated in the same abusive manner as this first example, when for the longest time I'd been writing the cursive T, my name. Do you know what this witch teacher did? A year or so later, we'd be learning cursive writing the next day. Well, the next day came and I already felt like I had a head start, and what did she do? She said,
"Hi, today we're going to learn cursive writing."
And then she had the nerve to say,
"Before we begin, I do want to clarify one thing. This is not the proper way to write in cursive."
And she went to the blackboard and she put the T in cursive the way that I had been doing it now for months and years. And I took that as like a personal insult, kind of like,
don't you dare get ahead of us. I'll show you and put you in your place.
She never said any of this, and of course I didn't report anything. I didn't know, but looking back now, that was abusive. Because when we learned the T, it was exactly as I was writing it. So it wasn't like I had something wrong and she corrected it. It seems as if she just wanted to shove me down a little bit because I felt like I had a head start. Well, that's all childhood baby stories. Well, the way that looks in an adult relationship, it was when I was living with a person for over a decade, and then slowly its habits and behaviors shifted, whereas plans were made that I wasn't included in. I'd wake up, person would be gone to work, I'd come home from work, it would be in bed, and so there was like isolation from each other. And then all of a sudden, this other party kept appearing, and these plans were made that I wasn't included in. I kind of put 2 and 2 together. New hairstyle, new clothing, new perfume. Plans I'm not included in. Plans used to be, hey, next month we're going to this event, became, oh, I'm going to this event. And just a whole deterioration of anything and everything that ever existed before, which for anybody with a brain, it would be kind of obvious that something's fishy. Well, I would say, something's fishy, something's going on. You're doing this, and I can tell. Well, kind of like that first example with the father telling the daughter that 1 plus 1 was not 2. Well, here I was putting 2 and 2 together as far as all the details I just mentioned, and the fact that it made a lot of sense, but I would be told,
oh, you have an active imagination, oh, you made that up in your head, oh, you're paranoid, oh, that's not true, I'm just friends with this person, and
that, my dear, is abuse. Every fiber of your being tells you something's fishy. The details you observe tell you something's fishy. And in this case, for example, eventually it was finally revealed that something fishy was going on the whole time. So that is abuse as far as the covert type of abuse, where you're using your brain, your logic, your intelligence, you're uncovering something, but yet you're told your discovery is wrong. Which one thing I noticed too is that throughout my entire life I've been able to use such tools and always have been successful, yet strangely when involved with one of several, not just this one but others, cluster B monsters, it's like all of a sudden my skills have just vanished, which of course is only temporary, because that's like I'm right on it from the beginning and I'm telling it like it is from day one, but they want to play that abuse game like the daddy did with the daughter and say, oh no, you've got that wrong. And even when you've suspected something and it later turns out to be true, you may be likely to use the I told you so, and you might say, I knew from day one this was going on and you had said it didn't. See, I told you. Well, you'll be told gaslighting responses in some cases, such as,
oh no, you had said that this and that was probably happening, but it wasn't happening for the reason you had said. It was because of this.
and it's like they want to still hijack this lie and make it out like you weren't right when you figured it out, even though you know you were. But that's another example of the abuse, because a lot of times it's isolated. Like you and this other person spend a lot of time together, and you know what you're experiencing. You've watched it go from love bombing, wonderful, to devaluation, evil, discarding behaviors. And the problem is nobody else is going to have that subjective viewpoint because you're the only one seeing it. Which means when you run to your friends outside of this and you say, oh my goodness, I think I'm involved with a terrible person, this happened and that happened, well, a lot of times the friends of yours are already flying monkeys for the cluster B creature, and more than likely he or she anticipated this very thing, probably gone to those flying monkeys and planted some seeds about you, like you are being paranoid lately, you are losing your mind. The other thing these creatures do, I've said it many times, they're like little kids. They devise these scams and these schemes, and they go through with them. And if you're there experiencing them, you know, or you can pretty much figure what's happening. But the problem is the things these children who are disguised as adults do are so ridiculous, so retarded. If you were to call one of your family members or friends aside that's not involved in it and say, I think that this is what's happening. I think this person's doing this because of, and you're giving these guesses of why somebody would do something, and it makes 100% sense to you because that's what you've pieced together, plus you have experience in childhood. It's just weird and awkward to think that now you're in an adult situation, but you're still dealing with those childish behaviors. And more than likely the person you're telling it to, their brain's going to go back to childhood too and think, yeah, well, I think you've lost it. That's the stuff we did in high school. I know the person you're talking about, and I think that you're wrong. Because the flying monkeys are groomed, they are flattered, they are given nothing but nice treatment. So when you step along and say, I don't like this person, I think it's doing this, you will appear to be the one with the problem. They love to do that triangulation. So regarding this simple model of abuse, I know you might be listening to the examples given, and you might say, that's not abuse, that's simply lying. Well, I agree. But this type of covert abuse blends in several of their tricks in their bag, which does include lying, and also it includes control. And you may think that's not control, that's just lying, but actually it is. Because control comes in many forms, and in covert abuse, control a lot of times has to do with the free-flowing, or lack thereof, of communication and information. So when we talk about the control, like with the real life example, when I would piece together evidence after evidence and say, this is what's going on, and I'd hear, no, it isn't. Oh, yes, it is, because, and you go through the list. Well, this is control because the partner is not admitting to any wrongdoing, which means it's just you spinning your wheels going through all these scenarios that you've detected and that are indicating abuse, but you'll just be told, oh, you've made all that up in your head. They all seem to use that line. I've heard it on many occasions. But no, that's control because you've discovered what's happening. You're trying to talk about what's happening, but the other person is claiming it's not happening. Well, that is like a brick wall. You can't take it any further. All you can do is go over more and more and more examples of why you feel this is going on. But with these types of people, with their straight face, they don't get embarrassed. They don't get ashamed. They simply just keep their face and say, you need help. Which is another common thing. They say that, which is, I think, projection, because they're the ones who need help and they never chose to get it, and they've turned out to be a cluster B monster as a result, and now they want to take everybody else down with them. But one other question that may come up is, if you find yourself involved with such a person doing these kinds of things, like the example I gave in real life was somebody you're living with and you find out they're doing all this other stuff. Well, imagine if it's just someone you're seeing and you constantly feel that the stories they tell you about what they did or didn't do don't seem to feel real, and you may challenge those. Well, it's the same type of abuse as that child in the beginning, where you notice A and B and C, which seems to lead to D, and you express this, and you'll be thrown off the track by being told, oh no, that's not it at all. Same type of covert abuse. But you may wonder, if that's going on, why do so many of these covert abusive relationships last for a while? I mean, why do they keep going? Well, I believe that one of the reasons is you have to realize that you and the abusive partner are both on two different mental tracks. You are on a track of being brainwashed by all the love bombing and thinking you found a really great person, and then eventually cracks starts to show. So you are like trying to pull things back to the beginning stages, thinking that this is a really good person. This person just slipped up here and there. We just need to get things back on track. But that's really not what's happening. Because the other brain track is this creature. This creature has targeted you for whatever purpose it may need you for. It's listening to you. It's hearing what you find important, what you don't find important, and is mirroring all that and acting like they're very similar to you. So that fuels you to stick around, because you've already seen the first impression, which was fake, which you didn't know, and you're wanting to restore that harmony back into place, yet you're seeing these blatant errors in communication and horrifying situations. So you think that you can fix these things and get things back to normal, but the other person's mind is on a different track. And I've learned one of their philosophies, these cluster B monsters. If you find yourself with that cognitive dissonance, thinking, well, it was so nice yesterday, but so evil today, well, what I've learned is, if you're involved with someone like this and they're showing some of these red flags or these crazy behaviors, that's consent. That, to them, tells them they're doing a good job. If you stick around with them, even if, let's say this morning, they talk to you and they tell you a story, and you say that story's a lie. Of course it is, but you'll be told no, it isn't. If you come back home the next day, it's a success for this creature. It's a very similar concept to, let's just say, the traditional model of a man and a woman are married, and the man slaps the woman every night. She doesn't like it. She doesn't do anything about it. She remains in the house, but every so often she'll go to him and say, look, honey, I really wish you wouldn't hit me. It really hurts, and I'm sick of covering my bruises up with makeup, and she's basically protesting what's bothering her. This type of abusive male will, in many cases, treat her like she's a buzzing fly in his face and swat her away like, oh, would you knock it off? Because he feels that because she's still there every day, well, she just needs to keep her mouth shut and just accept the facts. And that's how these creatures think. Because to them, they're saying, she ain't going anywhere. I'll hit her again tomorrow. But they don't want to hear about that abuse, which that's more severe than the covert, but still, that's the concept, the way it works. But these things may last because there's an internal battle going on in your own mind, because you've already got all the love bombing crap, which you thought was kind of fishy, but at the same time you feel a little guilty questioning someone who is just being nice to you, potentially. And of course they know all this. They know that sensitive, empathetic people don't want to hurt anyone else, so they'll shower you with anything and everything, way more than what you're doing. If you ever say, I don't think this is real, they will play the card of,
I can't believe all these things I did for you.
or if an inconsistency pops up,
I can't believe over this one misunderstanding you're going to be so upset. Well,
and another thing that contributes to the mental internal battle that you're going through as a target is kind of like in this situation you've been treated so wonderfully on the surface, at least for the longest time, and then when the trouble starts to surface later, you're caught, because if it was somebody brand new showing horrible red flags, you'd probably just say later. But in this case, you've kind of like incorporated them into your life, and you don't want to think that you would have made such a wrong decision to pick someone who is so horrifying, because a lot of the examples you uncover tell you this person's a cold-blooded, evil person. But then at the same time, you think, but this is the same person I just made love to, and it's very confusing. It's like, how can you be a loving person and an apparently hating person? And if you ask the monster, of course, you'll be thrown off the track even further. And on a final note, to wrap this short video up, would be the typical circumstances I've noticed that seem to occur with these types of covert people, where the target's thrown so far off guard because they're not used to having someone taking care of every little detail, so that kind of softens the target up, and then the more and more time that's spent together, little inconsistencies appear, which are always explained away, but eventually these creatures can't help it. Something is going to surface, and you, the target, who was happy possibly at first, is starting to wonder if maybe this thing is too good to be true, and then, of course, the target starts to question things even more, starts to notice common sense things even more, and then even tries to confront this creature, and will be told, oh no, that's not what it is, it was that. And then they want to believe that, so they'll keep going. But eventually, I think when the devalue occurs, it's usually once the target catches on that a game is being played. And because this straight-faced narcissistic monster is telling the target every single time, oh no, that isn't what's happening, oh no, you're wrong, oh no, your imagination's crazy, that builds up some trouble inside the brain of the target, and makes the target, if it's at least like I have been, wanting to make sense of it all and to say, look, wait, these are obvious facts, look, and like being forceful with the information, only to be told, oh, I told you 1,000 times that's not the way it is. And it's that same covert abuse where eventually they start to become irritated with you because you uncover more and more and more, as if they think you wouldn't. They seem to think that they should be able to get away with everything. But anyway, it degenerates into a point where it may even become like a thing where they're like always rolling their eyes at you, thinking, oh, there you go again with your conspiracy theories, when, in fact, they're 100% accurate. And then it deteriorates further, and then there's a discard, whether it's you leaving or the other person leaving. But it's a sad turn of events, so common. And there are other factors that can fit in based on the creature's luck or lack of luck in its next endeavors. Like if it is failure with someone it's trying for and they feel rejected and lonely, they might then hoover and call you, I've just been thinking about you a lot. And you, of course, if you don't know any better, will be like, come over. And anyway, have a great night.
I am the Narcopath. You probably wonder how or why I ever got the idea to seduce your father and also your brother, with 100% success, may I add. It's not my fault. In both cases, I wasn't wearing very many clothing. I was washing and drying my car, and I had to bend over, and my shorts might have shown a little bit more than they should have. Well, your father and your brother both approached me. I told them no, but it was their idea. So whatever they've told you is a lie. Would I lie to you? No. So you need to take that up with your father and your brother, because they started it, and they threatened me if I didn't go along with it, they would do something bad to me. So what choice did I have? Think about it.
And I know you probably wonder where I went and what I did. Well, since this is Narcopathic Confessions, I'll tell you.
Well, the truth is, my boyfriend and I broke up right before I seduced you. And the whole time you and I were together, and all those times I was not available for comment, I was desperately trying to get things back together with him. I'm very clever. I'm very ingenious, and I finally got him hooked back in. So I know that during that 6-month absence when I showed up, you thought that you could rekindle our romance, but the next day I got that call from him because my other scam worked, and I just disappeared. I'm smart. I think about the future.
Listen, Goyam, I've got one last confession to give you. I know from your previous questions, all of you ex-targets of mine, you all want closure. Whatever the fuck that is. When I finally decide on my own that I found my next target project, and I release you, I expect you simply to say okay and go away. But so many of you don't do that, which is part of my specialty, which works in well with the role I've already written up for you to my new lover, that you're the crazy, evil, obsessive ex, and you always seem to fulfill your role, especially with what I brainwashed them with, and what you say is like putty in my hand. It's like brilliant. When you do manage to get me alone after I've discarded you, all of you, this is to all of you out there, it's a common thread. You all are so desperate to know why or how I could do such a thing. How could I be so hateful after all we've been through together and all that? Well, honey, let me tell you, when you sit me down and specifically ask a particular question about this or that detail, I'm sure you've noticed that the responses I give probably are pretty retarded. Hence the reason you keep asking. I just wish you would forget it and move on. Many times, several of you, ex-targets of mine, have said,
But wait, you had said this specifically, but then you did that specific, and I gave you responses. So you think you're perfect? Why do you think you have to put me down? Never mind that I spent 6 months prior telling you exactly how I would never betray you ever, but that's old fake news by this point. If you pinned me down enough times, you probably figured out what I would never tell you. I'm retarded. My excuses don't add up. My reasons have no logic to them. And I know all this. So that is why I deliberately try to not have that conversation with you. And if you tried, I would roll my eyes. There you go again, putting me down. Which is my cop-out because the fact is you're right. Nothing I did or said made sense. I picked and chose from different movie stars' dialogue. I didn't know what I was saying. I was just trying to get through the social situation. So, give me a break. And don't expect too much. You do ask too much. After all I did for you, I was the best thing that ever happened to you. Never mind, it was fake, but you didn't need to know that.